This is Mac OS Ken.
If it's not one thing, it's another in the supply chain. Mac Pro pros and cons. And Blizzard, do you really want to upset Guinan? Really? It is Monday, the 12th of June, 2023. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from Mac OS Ken, brought to you by yours truly and sponsored by Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. Use code MacOSKen50 at factormeals.com/MacOSKen50 for 50% off your first box. This show is also sponsored by SimpliSafe, the right way to protect your home. You've heard me talk about SimpliSafe for years. You know, they were named Best Home Security of 2023 by U.S. News & World Report, and you know how easy a SimpliSafe system is to get going. I had my sensors, keypad, and base station up and running in well under an hour. Well, here's something you may not know. They are always innovating, always working on the next thing to help keep your home, your loved ones, and you safe. For example, their new 2-in-1 smoke and CO detector. It's next-generation hazard detection that distinguishes between fire and cooking smoke, so your home is protected and you get fewer false alarms. With SimpliSafe's 24/7 professional monitoring service, trained agents stand ready to respond in an emergency, sending police, firefighters, or EMTs to your door, even if you are away or can't be reached. That is SimpliSafe, keeping a lookout for under $1 a day. See how SimpliSafe can protect your home. Right now, get 20% off your new system when you sign up for interactive monitoring. Visit simplisafe.com/MacOSKen. SIMPLI. That's simplisafe.com/MacOSKen. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. Inflationary pressures seem to be impacting sales of iPhone. That is the thinking of KeyBanc analyst John Vinn. MarketWatch ran a piece late last week based on a note he wrote. After checking in with carriers, the analyst indicates that sales in the States fell 14% in May of this year versus the same month a year earlier. They also fell 8% from April sales. Typically, the analyst says sales in May tend to rise 3% versus April. Vinn's note says this likely reflects continued inflationary pressure impacts on consumer spending, partially offset by increased sales traffic from Memorial Day weekend and summer break. Anyone looking for good news in iPhone sales in the States should look to the high end of the line. While carriers have plenty of units on the lower end of the line, demand for iPhone 14 Pro and iPhone 14 Pro Max remains resilient, according to his note. Worth noting, Vinn doesn't cover Apple for KeyBanc, though he does cover component companies in the iPhone supply chain. Brandon Nispel covers Apple for the firm. He's got a buy rating on Apple shares and a price target of $180. He will likely want to do something about either the rating or the target soon, though. Apple closed Friday a few pennies shy of 181. Even a diversified supply chain may have issues. iLounge cites a report from the Wall Street Journal that says a number of electronics manufacturers in Vietnam have been asked to cut down on their power consumption. A number of tech manufacturers, including Apple partners Foxconn and Quanta, have set up production in Vietnam. While there are likely many reasons, one was believed to be a desire by the Cupertino company to lessen its reliance on China. For Vietnam, though, it may be too much of a good thing. Notices sent by power authorities are said to have told recipients that there are too many electronics manufacturers in the area and that power consumption is simply skyrocketing. It's not just more demand, though. There's also less power. A drought in the country has apparently reduced hydroelectric power generation. The piece says production for Apple and Foxconn have not been affected so far. Additionally, iLounge says Foxconn is believed to be setting up power generators that can go online as soon as next year. Neither Apple nor Foxconn offered comment for the Wall Street Journal report. It would be a bigger story if the M2 Ultra Apple announced last week wasn't better than the M1 Ultra announced last year. And yet, numbers make the better performance news, apparently. That's how you get the Apple Insider headline, M2 Ultra benchmarks show performance bump over M1 Ultra. Citing the first wave of Geekbench 6 results, the piece says the single-core score for M2 Ultra hits around 2,800 versus the M1 Ultra single-core score of 2,379. The multi-core score for the M2 Ultra arrives in excess of 21,000 versus the M1 Ultra's multi-core score of 17,565. Now, what's crazy sounding is how much better M2 Ultra scores than the biggest, baddest Intel-based Mac Apple ever offered. According to the report, benchmark scores for the 128-core Xeon W3257M used in the highest spec Mac Pro only manages 1,377 and 10,382 in the single and multi-core results. Again, that's versus scores of 2,800 and over 21,000 for Apple's latest and greatest. In effect, says Apple Insider, the as-found M2 Ultra results appear to be more than double the scores of the Intel variant. I will say, those certainly do sound like numbers. And of course, numbers aren't all usability is about. While Apple talked about the expandability of the new Mac Pro a week ago, a separate piece from Apple Insider argues that users won't be happy with the lack of Radeon PCIe video card support. A piece from Mac Rumors addresses that same issue, saying while the new Mac Pro features 6 available PCI Express expansion slots for audio, video capture, storage, networking, and more, the desktop tower is no longer compatible with graphics cards. Instead, graphics processing is handled entirely by the M2 chip, which includes up to a 76-core GPU that can access up to 192 gigabytes of unified memory. Again, those sound like numbers. The Apple Insider piece may be based on perceived limitation. Maybe that site's thinking that people will want the freedom to go higher, further, faster, even if it's not necessary. Or maybe they're looking for a bit of future-proofing. Apple Insider may be thinking that expansion slots should mean the ability to either trade out or augment the machine's video crunching capability. Whatever the case, one Apple exec addressed that specific lack of expandability last week. In an interview with Daring Fireball's John Gruber, Apple hardware engineering chief John Turnus said, "Fundamentally, we built our architecture around this shared memory model and that optimization, and so it's not entirely clear to me how you'd bring another GPU and do so in a way that is optimized for our systems. It hasn't been a direction that we wanted to pursue." Time will tell whether answers like that appease potential Mac Pro buyers. More news in a moment, but first a word from Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit and sponsor of today's show. Summer is here. And not technically, but come on. How much of this summer do you want to spend in the kitchen? Maybe you like to cook but have lots planned. Having more to do doesn't mean skimping on flavor or nutrition. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are ready in just 2 minutes. So all you have to do is heat and enjoy, then get going on the things you want to do. Now, heat and eat isn't always synonymous with delicious. I am telling you, every meal I have had with Factor has been fantastic. From the sun-dried tomato chicken on their keto menu to the al pastor shredded pork on the calorie counter. The sauces are wonderful. The proteins are wonderful. The sides are wonderful. With over 30 chef-prepared, dietitian-approved options every week, you are bound to find lots you'll love. Head to factormeals.com/MacOSKen50 and use code MacOSKen50 to get 50% off your first box. That's code MacOSKen50 at factormeals.com/MacOSKen50 to get 50% off your first box. Taste what has made Factor America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. Get 50% off your first box with code MacOSKen50 at factormeals.com/MacOSKen50. A U.S. district judge has given the green light to a class action lawsuit against Apple and Amazon. A report from Apple Insider says the suit accuses the two of conspiring to artificially inflate the price of iPhones and iPads sold through the superseller's site. Prior to an agreement made between Apple and Amazon in 2018, says the piece, Apple products were only available via third-party marketplaces. The prices were sometimes lower than retail, but the devices were not always in perfect condition. Around the time of the 2018 agreement, the report says Apple changed its reseller rules. Under the new deal, only authorized resellers could sell through Amazon, or resellers who bought at least $2.5 million worth of refurbished product every 3 months. The suit says the change cut the number of Apple sellers on Amazon by 98%, dropping the number from about 600 resellers to 7. In turn, the suit says prices for the gear on Amazon have increased by 20%. No word in the piece on next steps in the case. Apple's apparently moving ahead on a planned campus in the Tar Heel state. Apple Insider cites a report from WRAL in Raleigh, North Carolina, that says the company has applied for construction permits for 324,000 square feet of offices in the state's Research Triangle. According to the report, Apple filed the paperwork on the 30th of May and had begun applying for permits within Wake County in August 2022. The permits were related to clearing land and managing stormwater before construction officially began. The piece says the plan calls for buildings up to 8 stories tall, sitting on 281 acres of land. They could eventually host over 3,000 employees, according to the piece. While plans for buildings of its own have been on the drawing board for at least 5 years, Apple has already set up shop in the state. The piece says the Cupertino company is currently occupying a MetLife office building in Cary until the new campus is complete. That building has already seen close to $20 million in renovations, according to the report. If you're staying in Paris to get away from your parents or why ever, feast your eyes on Apple Maps. Mac Rumors says the Cupertino cartographers have done the hyper-detail thing for the City of Lights, the City of Love, the City of Fromage, maybe. According to the report, Apple says the updated experience provides richer detail for road markings, buildings, commercial districts, land cover, trees, elevation, public transit routes, and more. Turn-by-turn navigation is also improved with augmented reality walking directions in Paris, as well as the addition of cycling directions along bike lanes and bike-friendly roads. Plus, you can scope such landmarks as the Louvre, the Eiffel Tower, and the Arc de Triomphe in 3D in Apple Maps. If you go to Paris, be sure to go to the top of the Arc de Triomphe. A lot of people don't know you can do that, but you can. But really, go to the Sewer Museum, Musée des Égouts de Paris. It was seriously one of my favorite things when I was there. That and Bateau-Bus. Not to be all gonzo, but I'm going to go back there someday. Hey, have you guys heard the news? Zava is coming to AFC Richmond. By which I mean Messi is coming to MLS. It's hard to grok just how deep into Major League Soccer Apple is and how much the game means to the company. Have you heard about the Lionel Messi deal? Like most Americans, I suspect, I have almost no idea who Lionel Messi is. According to a piece from Axios, Messi is one of the world's most popular players. And he is coming to MLS? He signed a deal with Inter Miami, though really, it sounds like he has signed a deal with Apple. According to Axios, Apple will reportedly pay Messi a cut of revenue from new subscriptions to its MLS Season Pass, compensation on top of his team salary, and another profit share arrangement from league partner Adidas. If he's as popular as Axios says he is, he could drive significant subscriptions, and soon. A piece from Sporting News says Messi could take the pitch for Inter Miami as early as next month. With half the season gone, MLS subscriptions for the remainder of the year are now half price. It's hard to tell what the arrival of a European player would do for subscriptions here in the States, but around the world, well, I don't know what color all the currencies are, but they do spend. Oh, and to get people here, there, and everywhere excited, more content. Axios says Apple has announced a new 4-part Apple TV Plus documentary series on Messi, produced by Smuggler Entertainment. And finally today, so I guess Whoopi Goldberg is a Mac user and a video gamer, making it kind of a hard knock life for her. Blizzard released Diablo 4 last week, and a piece from the site PC Gamer says Goldberg bought it, not realizing it would not run on her Mac. In a post on Instagram, and after acknowledging that there are bigger problems on the planet, the piece says Goldberg castigated Blizzard for not giving sufficient warning to Mac users that, unlike Diablo 3, Diablo 4 wouldn't be available on any desktop platform but Windows. I use Apple computers. That's what I've always used to play Diablo, said Goldberg, and suddenly now Diablo 4 is not available to me on my Apple computer. I already bought Diablo 4, she said, before leaning into a personal appeal. Blizzard Entertainment, this is Whoopi. You know how much I love Diablo. I would like y'all to let those of us who use our Apples to play, allow us to play on the Apple, take Diablo 4, and let us do it and have a great time. Though Blizzard has offered no official response, Diablo General Manager Rod Ferguson has heard her cry. He didn't respond, so much as say on Twitter, I did not have Whoopi Goldberg yelling at me on Instagram on my Diablo 4 launch bingo card. macOS Ken, brought to you by me and sponsored by Simply Safe. Get 20% off your new system when you sign up for interactive monitoring at simplysafe.com/macOSKen. This show is also sponsored by Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. Use code macOSKen50 at factormeals.com/macOSKen50 for 50% off your first box. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media, online at backbeatmedia.com. You can reach me a couple of ways. info@macosken.com or call 716-780-4080. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.